Okay, so, I think when most people think about fears, right, they think of things like snakes,
Right.
spiders,
Yeah.
maybe heights,
Uh-huh.
the usual suspects, right?
Yeah, the classics.
But it turns out that the human mind is capable of conjuring up anxieties and obsessions that are way, way more unusual.
Oh, absolutely. And that's where we're heading today.
Exactly, yeah. This is a deep dive
Uh,
straight into a fascinating collection of human experiences.
yeah, and it was really your curiosity that sparked this whole thing.
Well, and the amazing resources.
Oh, absolutely. I mean, Phobias and Manias by Kate Summerscale, that was just wow.
Yeah, it's a really, really rich book. And then we've got this great introduction from a psychiatrist,
Yeah.
and even the translator's note,
Oh, yeah.
talking about the cultural differences and how these ideas have evolved. I mean, it's a whole package.
It's a treasure trove, really.
Yeah. So our mission here is to kind of explore this whole landscape
Right.
of fears and desires.
Yeah. To go beyond just, simple definitions.
Right. Like, what's the story behind these things?
Exactly. Where do they come from? How do they affect our lives?
Yeah. How do they shape societies even? I mean, it's huge.
It's big. Yeah.
Okay. So when you first come across a book like this, right,
Yeah.
it says 99 different phobias and manias.
It makes you think, huh?
I mean, that in itself is pretty wild, right?
It is. It's a testament to the sheer variety, right, of what we can experience. And not just now, but throughout history,
Right.
across cultures.
Yeah.
Summerscale, she pulls examples from literature, from film, from current research. It's pretty impressive.
Yeah, it really highlights that this isn't just some modern medical thing.
No, not at all.
This has been going on forever in different ways.
Right.
And what struck me is that so many of these conditions, whether it's a phobia or a mania,
Yeah.
they seem to have this anxiety at the core, right? I mean, we all feel anxiety. It's a normal human emotion. But it's like the book is saying that it's when that anxiety becomes like excessive
Yeah.
or we can't control it.
Right. That's when it becomes a problem.
Right. That's when it turns into something else.
Exactly. And now we're starting to understand the biology a bit more.
Oh, really?
Yeah. It seems like there are certain parts of the brain,
Oh.
certain connections, certain circuits that can make some people more susceptible.
Oh, so it's like some people are wired differently.
In a way, yeah. Like their brains might react more strongly to certain things, but it's not like a guarantee,
Right.
It's more like a tendency.
Okay. Okay. So it's not just about one part of the brain going haywire.
No. Yeah.
It's this whole like internal world.
Right. Our biology, our psychology,
Yeah, interacting with everything around us.
our experiences, our culture,
Yeah.
our environment, it's complex.
Yeah, it's a lot, right?
It is. And what's fascinating is, you see all these variations,
Mm-hmm.
different times, different cultures, even between individuals.
Right.
But there's this underlying suggestion that maybe there are some common mechanisms at play,
Oh, interesting.
something fundamental,
Yeah, like deep down there's something connecting all of this.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It makes you think, like, how many of our own quirks
Oh, yeah.
or discomforts
Uh-huh.
are somewhere on this spectrum,
Right.
even if we wouldn't call them a phobia or a mania.
Right, exactly. And that's what the psychiatrist was getting at, right?
Yeah.
In the introduction.
Absolutely. This
Yeah.
isn't about, like, medicalizing every little thing.
Right.
It's about understanding human diversity,
Yeah.
our imperfections.
Yeah.
We're not all the same.
And I think that's a really reassuring thought because sometimes, you feel this fear
Right.
or you have this weird obsession
Mhm.
and you feel like you're totally alone.
Yeah.
But to see it in this context
Right.
of all these other conditions,
It helps.
it does.
It normalizes it. And hopefully it reduces the stigma.
Right. And maybe even encourages people to reach out for help.
Absolutely. If it's really impacting their lives, you know?
Yeah. Okay, so shifting gears a bit. The translator's note really made me think about how we even define normal
Oh, yeah.
versus abnormal.
Right.
It's a big question.
Right. It is. And the translator's own story about their fear of cats
Oh, yeah.
evolving into affection,
Wow.
then into a worry about the cat being lonely.
Yeah,
It shows how personal and often how illogical
right.
these states can be.
Yeah, and how they can shift over time.
Right.
And the translator uses this word, right?
Yeah.
To describe this kind of like,
Weirdness.
yeah, this feeling of like something being a bit off.
Uh-huh.
And then there's the challenge of even talking about these feelings in different languages.
Oh, yeah. The names themselves can be tricky.
Right.
Like, you have similar English terms for different phobias. Acrophobia, fear of heights, versus aerophobia, fear of flying,
Right, right.
aquaphobia, fear of water, but then hydrophobia, that's also fear of water, but specifically related to rabies.
Oh, right, right. So the same word can mean different things.
Exactly. And then you have phobias like bembocamallophobia,
What is that?
fear of cotton wool.
Really?
Yeah, or sedate phobia, fear of silence. Try finding direct translations for those.
Right. Those must be tough.
Yeah. So the translator decided to rely on Summerscale's definitions
Okay.
as the basis for the Chinese translations.
Yeah, that makes sense. To be consistent.
Exactly. And then there's this whole thing about the etymology,
Oh, yeah.
like where the words come from. Claustrophobia.
Fear of enclosed spaces.
Right. From the Latin claustrum, meaning closed. But there was an earlier term, clithrophobia,
Oh, I never heard that one.
from the Greek kleithron, meaning lock.
Huh. So, like, the language itself evolved.
It did, yeah, to capture these experiences more precisely.
Wow. And then there's demonomania.
Oh, that one's a doozy.
Right. From the Greek daemon, which at first just meant a spirit.
Right. Not necessarily evil.
But then it kind of transformed.
Through religious texts, through art.
Yeah. Into this, like, malevolent force.
Right. A demon.
And then the translator connects that to the character Damon Michiko in Dr. X.
Oh, yeah, that's an interesting comparison.
I know, right?
So dedicated to saving patients.
Yeah.
Almost obsessively. People called her a demon.
Right. But it's like
that.
a positive kind of demon.
Right, a relentless drive.
Yeah.
But for good.
Yeah, there's so many layers to it.
There are, and that's what the translator is pointing to, I think.
Yeah.
Understanding our own experiences.
With fears, with obsessions.
Recognizing that everyone has them.
To some degree, yeah.
Part of being human.
It is. Okay, so let's talk about how these ideas of phobias and manias actually emerged historically.
Okay.
Summerscale talks about Benjamin Rush.
Oh, yes.
In 1786, he was like madly naming all these different manias.
Right. It was a turning point, really.
Yeah, because before that, phobia was mostly about physical symptoms.
Yeah.
And mania was just like social excess.
More general, yeah.
Right. But Rush started to bring them into the realm of psychology.
He did. And his definition of phobia,
Oh.
fear of that imagined evil.
Okay.
Or excessive dread of that which really exists.
That's interesting.
It is. And his examples.
Okay.
Fear of dust, fear of ghosts, doctors,
Right.
mice.
Yeah, those seem almost like quaint now.
They do, a bit. But they were very real anxieties for people then.
Right, right.
And then he starts identifying these new manias.
Okay, like what?
Gaming mania.
Yeah.
Military mania.
Oh, wow.
Even freedom mania.
Huh. Freedom mania. That's wild.
It is. It gives you a sense of the anxieties of that time.
Yeah, definitely. And he even uses humor sometimes.
Oh, yeah.
Like homophobia.
He describes it as feeling compelled to go to the tavern after work.
That's funny.
It is. It makes him feel, like, relatable, you know?
Yeah, totally.
But then, over the next century, things got more complex.
Okay.
The psychiatric explanations became more sophisticated.
Gotcha.
And the list just kept growing.
Right. So throughout the 19th century and into our time, we've got all these new phobias. Agoraphobia.
Right.
Claustrophobia.
Yeah.
Erythrophobia. Fear of blushing. Taphophobia. Fear of being buried alive.
Wow.
Right? And then the manias.
Oh, yeah.
Choreomania, which is like a dancing mania.
Right.
Dromomania, an urge to wander. Arithmomania, obsession with numbers. Trichotillomania, pulling out your hair.
Right.
And even more recently, we've got nomophobia.
What's that?
Fear of being without your phone.
Oh, right.
Then there's bambocamallophobia, coulrophobia, fear of clowns,
Yeah.
and trypophobia, which is fear of clusters of small holes.
Wow. That's a lot.
It is, right? I mean, the list is huge.
It is. And sometimes there are even multiple names for the same phobia.
Oh, really?
Yeah. Like for fear of flying.
Oh, yeah.
You've got aerophobia, aviophobia, pteromerhanophobia,
Wow.
and then just plain old flying phobia.
It's like we're trying really hard to categorize all of this.
We are. And Summerscale makes a good point.
Okay.
A lot of these diagnoses are like culturally constructed.
Oh, interesting.
Some reflect prejudices like homophobia, xenophobia.
Yeah, those are more about societal attitudes.
Exactly. Then there's the ones that describe trends.
Okay.
Beetlemania, tulipomania.
Right, those are more about like social contagions.
Yeah, and then the humorous ones. Abophobia, fear of palindromes,
Oh, yeah.
hippopotomonstrosequipedaliophobia, fear of long words.
Right. Those are just like playing with language.
They are,
Yeah,
but it's
yeah.
important to remember.
Yeah.
Most of these conditions are very real.
Right.
And they cause real suffering.
Yeah, absolutely. These aren't just funny labels.
Yeah.
It's people's lives.
Right. And ultimately, I think phobias and manias,
Yeah.
they reveal something about us. Oh, okay.
Our fears, our desires, the anxieties of our time.
Yeah, that makes sense.
There's this quote from David Trotter.
Okay.
He says, "Phobias indicate anxiety reaching a perceptible degree."
So like a tipping point.
Yeah. It becomes so intense that you have to react.
Right. Either confront it or avoid it.
Exactly. And he also talks about manias.
Okay.
He says they compress our fears and desires into these private obsessions.
Interesting. So like giving them a form.
Yeah, maybe even a function.
Okay, like it helps us cope in a way.
Possibly, yeah.
Wow, that's really thought-provoking.
It is.
Okay, so let's get a little bit more formal here.
Right.
How does modern psychiatry define phobias?
So according to the DSM-5, that's the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders,
Okay.
which was updated in 2013. A phobia is an intense, irrational fear
Okay.
of a specific object or situation that lasts for 6 months or longer,
Okay.
and it has to significantly interfere with your life.
So this fear leads you to avoid the thing
Right.
or to endure it with extreme anxiety.
Okay, that makes sense.
And they distinguish between social anxiety disorder
Right.
and specific phobias.
So what's the difference?
Social anxiety is more about fear of social situations
Okay.
where you might be judged.
Right.
Specific phobias, they have 5 main categories.
Okay, what are those?
Animal phobias.
Like snakes, spiders.
Right. Natural environment phobias.
Okay. It's like heights, storms.
Exactly. Then blood injection injury phobias.
Okay.
Situational phobias like enclosed spaces, public transportation,
Mm-hmm.
and then another category,
Okay.
which includes things like fear of vomiting, choking, loud noises.
Right, the more unusual ones.
Yeah.
It's interesting that Summerscale says specific phobias often respond well to treatment,
They do.
but only like 1 in 8 people actually seek help.
Yeah, that's a surprisingly low number.
It is. I don't know why that is.
I mean, maybe they just avoid the trigger, or they think it's silly to ask for help.
yeah, that's possible.
It can be hard to admit to these things.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
So how common are phobias overall?
So there was this analysis in the Lancet Psychiatry in 2018.
Okay.
They looked at 25 surveys from like 1984 to 2014.
Wow, so a big data set.
Yeah. And they found that the lifetime prevalence of any specific phobia is about 7.2%.
That's a lot more than I would have thought.
It is. And the World Health Organization, in 2017, they found similar numbers across 22 countries.
Wow, so it's really a global phenomenon.
It is. And there are some variations by age and gender.
Oh, how so?
Phobias are more common in children and teenagers.
Okay.
And then the rate drops by about half in older adults.
Huh. Interesting.
And women are twice as likely to report a specific phobia compared to men.
Wow, really?
Yeah. Social anxiety disorder also varies.
Okay.
It's about 7% in the US and 12% in the UK.
Huh. Okay. But it's important to distinguish between these diagnosable disorders.
Right.
And just like mild fears or aversions that many people have.
Absolutely. Like being nervous about public speaking.
Right.
Or not liking spiders.
Yeah, those are pretty common.
They are. And actually, over 70% of Americans say they have inexplicable fears.
Wow, so most people have something.
Yeah. And Summerscale, she starts out not identifying with any phobias.
Okay.
Except maybe blushing as a teenager and fear of flying.
Right.
But by the end of her research, she almost convinces herself she has them all.
Ah, so just by learning about them,
Yeah.
you start to see them everywhere.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've talked about what phobias and manias are, how common they are, but where do they come from?
Well, there are a few different theories.
Okay.
One perspective is that some phobias,
Okay.
especially those related to objects, words, numbers, might be rooted in ancient superstitions,
Oh, interesting.
like remnants of polytheistic beliefs.
So like echoes of the past.
Yeah. Maybe
Yeah.
those fears served a purpose once, but they've stuck around in these irrational ways.
Wow, that's a really interesting idea.
It is. And then there's Granville Stanley Hall.
Okay.
In 1914, he said, "Fright is the prolific mother of phobias."
So he's saying childhood scares
Yeah.
can lead to these deeper fears.
Right. And sometimes even delusional fears.
That makes sense. I mean, we've all heard those stories.
We have. And then there's Freud.
Okay.
His view from 1909 was that phobias are repressed fears
Okay.
from the unconscious
Uh-huh.
that we transfer onto external objects.
So it's like a defense mechanism.
Exactly. He said it's easier to try and escape an external danger
Right.
than to confront an internal one.
Okay, that makes sense psychologically.
Yeah. And then you have the evolutionary psychology perspective.
Okay, what's that about?
They say that many phobias might be adaptive.
Okay.
Like, they helped our ancestors survive.
So, like, fear of heights.
Right. So you don't fall off cliffs.
Yeah.
Fear snakes, so you avoid venomous bites.
Yes.
Aversion to rats and slugs, to avoid disease.
Right, so they're like built-in protection.
Exactly. Biologically prepared fears.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
And it does feel very primal.
It does. It's that fight or flight response.
Yeah.
Triggered by brain chemicals, adrenaline, all that.
And the physical symptoms.
Right. The trembling, the sweating.
Yeah. It feels very instinctive.
It does. And they even try to explain why some phobias are more common in women.
Oh, really? Like, why is that?
They say it's to protect offspring,
Okay.
like heightened vigilance during reproductive years.
That makes sense in a way.
Yeah. But it's important to remember,
Okay.
these evolutionary explanations are often after the fact.
Right.
They don't account for everything.
Yeah, and they can be a bit too neat sometimes.
Yeah. You have to consider the social and cultural factors, too.
Right, like how women's anxieties have often been dismissed.
Exactly.
Okay, so what are some other theories?
Well, there's the learning theories, like the famous experiment by John B. Watson and Rosalie Rayner in 1919.
Oh, yeah, I've heard about that.
They showed that you could induce phobias through conditioning.
Right, like pairing a stimulus with something scary.
Exactly. And then Albert Bandura in the 1960s, he talked about observational learning.
Okay.
Like, you learn fears by watching others.
Oh, especially your parents.
Right. He said family transmission of fear can be just as strong as genetics.
Wow, really?
Yeah. But it usually needs a trigger.
Okay, so it's not automatic.
No.
Gotcha. So it seems like phobias are this mix of biology, experience, and culture.
Yeah, it's complex.
It is. So how do manias fit into all of this?
Well, Summerscale makes a distinction.
Okay.
Phobias are about avoidance.
Right.
Manias are about approach.
Oh, okay.
This urge to engage with something.
Okay.
There's this concept of partial or specific monomania
Okay.
from Jean-Étienne Esquirol in the early 19th century.
Gotcha.
And then Pierre Genet in the 20th century, he did these detailed case studies.
And what did they find?
They found that these manias often revolve around compulsive behaviors
Okay.
related to objects, actions, thoughts.
Okay, so like hair pulling.
Yeah. Hoarding.
Right.
Persistent, intrusive thoughts.
Gotcha.
And it's hard to say exactly how common manias are
Oh, why is that?
because modern classifications have kind of split them up.
Okay.
You've got addiction, OCD, body-focused repetitive behaviors, impulse control disorders,
Right.
even parts of borderline personality disorder.
So it's scattered.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And are there any theories about what causes manias?
Well, like phobias, they're sometimes attributed to brain chemistry or to psychological distress.
Right.
Maybe even suppressed feelings.
So it's like these normal desires,
Right.
but amplified.
Exactly. Summerscale gives some really interesting examples.
Okay, like what?
Excessive laughter,
Okay.
uncontrollable shouting, compulsive shopping,
Right.
kleptomania, stealing things, pathological lying, pyromania, setting fires,
Okay.
hypersexuality, intense elation,
Right.
excoriation disorder, picking your skin,
Yeah.
masochism, enjoying pain,
Yeah.
and narcissistic tendencies, needing constant admiration.
Wow, that's quite a range.
It is. And then you have these collective manias.
Oh, yeah. Like group outbreaks of weird behavior.
Right. Dancing plagues, mass laughing, collective trembling or screaming.
Yeah, I've heard about those.
What's interesting is that they're sometimes interpreted as like social resistance,
Oh, okay.
a way for unexplained feelings to come out.
So it's like the group is expressing something together.
Exactly. And when we define something as a mania or a phobia,
Yeah.
we're creating boundaries.
Okay.
What's normal, what's not.
Right, like acceptable behavior versus not.
Exactly. But those boundaries can shift.
Oh, really?
Yeah, especially during times of crisis.
Okay, so like during wars or epidemics.
Right. When the whole society is under stress.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So whether it's individual or collective, phobias and manias have this power.
Okay.
Summerscale even calls them spells.
Wow.
Like, they imbue objects or actions with this meaning,
Uh,
this power to control us,
right.
to change us.
That's a really interesting way to think about it.
It is. And even though they can cause so much distress,
Right.
they also make the world feel more vivid,
Okay.
more intense.
Like we're seeing things differently.
Yeah, like a glimpse into our own strangeness.
That's a good way to put it.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's dive into some specific examples.
Right.
You picked out some really interesting ones from the book.
I did.
Let's start with ablutophobia.
Fear of washing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Seems to be pretty common in kids.
It is. And Summerscale talks about how in 19th century France,
Okay.
there was a lot of resistance to washing.
Really?
Yeah. Some people even thought dirt was protective.
Oh, wow. Like the opposite of what we believe now.
Right. And sweat was seen as healthy,
Ah.
even sexual,
Oh, wow.
and nudity was considered shameful.
So the whole idea of washing your body
Yeah,
was taboo for some people.
it was. There's the story of a 68-year-old woman
Okay.
who was told she should bathe,
Uh-huh.
and she was outraged.
What did she say?
She said, "I am 68. I have never washed there."
Oh, wow.
And it wasn't just the lower classes.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the aristocracy had similar views.
Huh. That's fascinating. And then later on, you have schools and the military trying to enforce hygiene.
Right. It was a big shift.
It was. And there's this tragic story of an artilleryman in Douai.
Oh, yeah.
He died after being forcibly washed.
It shows how extreme this phobia could be.
Yeah, it's really sad.
It is.
Okay, let's talk about acarophobia.
Fear of tiny insects.
Yeah, this one is really creepy.
It is. That feeling of something crawling on your skin.
Yeah. It's called formication.
Right. And it can have real physical causes,
Okay.
like shingles,
Right.
or even more serious things.
Okay.
But it can also be psychological.
Right, like delusional parasitosis.
Exactly. Where people believe they're infested,
Yeah.
and it can spread through a group.
Oh, really? Like a shared delusion.
Yeah. There's this case of an airline ticket office in LA.
Okay.
All these female employees reported insect bites,
Uh-huh.
but they couldn't find any insects.
Wow.
They think it was stress, static electricity,
Yeah, okay.
and the power of suggestion.
Right.